Vaccines in the Han Chinese, presented by Stephanie O'Donnell, Liz Pablo, Claybourne Poindexter, and Marnie Shotwell. The Han make up approximately 92% of the population of China and 95% of the population of Taiwan. The Han Chinese are the world's largest ethnic group, with over 1.3 billion people. There are over 3 million people of Chinese descent that live in the United States, which constitutes approximately 1% of our population. The Han culture has also migrated to Canada, Peru, Australia, and Africa. The Han is such an overwhelming dominance of the Chinese population that the history of China can also be known as a history of the Han Chinese. China is bordered by several countries and seas and divided into 3 distinct regions. Mountains in the west, including the Himalayas, deserts and basins in the northeast, and low valleys and plains in the southeast. The Chinese Communist Party has ruled over China proper since 1949. Taiwan is ruled by a different government. The President of China is the head of state, serving as the ceremonial figurehead under the National People's Congress. The Premier of China is the head of government, presiding over the State Council composed of 4 vice premiers and the heads of ministries and commissioners. As a one-party state, the General Secretary of the Communist Party of China holds ultimate power and authority over state and government. The Han have historically accommodated religions of diverse origin. During the Han Dynasty, from 206 BC to 220 AD, 3 religions grew. Taoism is considered to be the main Han religion. It was also founded during the Han Dynasty. The Chinese people held Taoist ceremonies for worship and religious purposes. Taoism can be characterized by the belief for opposites, such as there would be no love without hate. Buddhism is also a major religion in China during the Han Dynasty. It was believed to have been brought by travelers who took the Silk Road from North India. Confucianism was more of a philosophy rather than a religion, but it's also ruled China for almost 2,000 years. It was during the Han Dynasty that China first embraced Confucianism. Despite it not being a religion, it became one of the most important ideological beliefs during that era. The healthcare system in China consists of both public and private medical institutions and insurance programs, and about 95% of the population has basic health insurance coverage. Under the Healthy China 2020 initiative, China is currently undertaking an effort to cut healthcare costs, and the government is requiring that insurance cover 70% of costs of medical procedures by 2017. The Chinese government is working on providing affordable basic health care to all residents by 2020. Traditional Chinese medicine was born from 2 principles, yin and yang. These come together to mean harmony that in China relates to health and good fortune. In traditional Chinese medicine, cupping is a method of applying acupressure by creating a vacuum next to the patient's skin. The therapy is used to relieve what is called stagnation and is used in the treatment of respiratory diseases such as the common cold, pneumonia, and bronchitis. Acupuncture is another practice used regularly. Acupuncturists insert tiny needles into specific points on the energy channels of the body to promote healing and stimulate the free flow of energy in the body and mind. It's used to treat many conditions, including muscular pain, headaches, asthma, digestive complaints, as well as anxiety and depression. Chinese herbal medicine is used to regulate the natural balance of the body and restore health. Herbal medicine has been used for centuries to treat most health conditions. They can also be used safely in conjunction with many Western therapies. These herbs come in the forms of pills, powders, tinctures, and raw herbs. Many Han Chinese still hold on to traditional beliefs. Confucianism maintains a place at the center of the Han family. Confucianism teaches an achievement of harmony through observing these 5 basic relationships of society. These basic relationships help teach hierarchical roles, social class system, clearly defined behavioral code, the importance of family, and respect for elders. The Han also believe in the balance of yin and yang. Yang symbolizes the male positive energy that produces light, warmth, and fullness. Yin symbolizes the female but negative energy, the force of darkness, cold, and emptiness. Yin and yang exert power over human beings and the universe. To the Han Chinese, health is a state of spiritual and physical harmony with nature. This is the balance again between yin and yang. Daily nutrition to maintain health includes eating 1,000-year eggs on a daily basis. Daily exercise is important, so Tai Chi is practiced commonly. Amulets are prepared to prevent evil spirits and to protect health. The amulets can be hung over a door, worn in the hair, or pinned to clothing. Jade is seen as the most precious stone because it is seen as the giver of children, health, immortality, wisdom, growth, and victory. Time orientation for the Han Chinese is not past, present, or future oriented. Instead, the group has a different perception and experience. They perceive time as a dynamic wheel with circular movements and the present as a reflection of the eternal. The wheel continues to turn in an unforeseen direction. Individuals are then expected to adjust to the present, which surrounds the spinning wheel and seeks a harmonious relationship with their surroundings. Another way to describe their time concept is as polychronic. They adhere less to the fact that time is distant and linear. They focus on the completion of the present and often will perform more than one activity simultaneously. When they must make decisions, they do not focus on their own benefit, but instead on their tradition and customs that affect the decisions. When caring for this group of people, it is important to consider the fact they may not comply to fixed schedules. They may arrive late for an appointment, may want to complete one task before moving on to another, or may implement more than one task at a time. It is important to understand that when they need to make a decision, this group of people may request additional time to consider many variables. The Han Chinese are non-contact individuals. They often feel uncomfortable in a situation where they must be face-to-face with another person. Because they are non-contact individuals, they often view other groups who are contact people as pushy, aggressive, impolite, or obnoxious. These facts need to be considered before judging the Han Chinese as extremely shy or withdrawn. It's important to consider they may feel uncomfortable with tasks that involve closeness, increased eye contact, and touch. To the Han Chinese, family is very important. Visiting friends and relatives is an important social ritual. The oldest male in the family is represented as the head of the household. Husbands can have more authority over wives, and wives may be expected to be obedient to parents and in-laws. The traditional Han family consists of the entire extended family, and it's considered the duty of the son to take care of his aging father until death. To this group, caring for their family brings honor, and not doing so will bring shame. They usually have a hierarchical structure, meaning the older children have authority over the younger children. Boys may be more valued than girls, so the birth of a boy can be a more joyous event. When it comes to choosing a wife or husband, the young adult will prefer to do that on their own, but may often seek advice from their parents or relatives. Divorce can be viewed as shameful, but continues to rise in today's society. When caring for this group, it's important to remember that they are family-oriented. It can be helpful to assess the client's kinship and identify the authoritative family member. Opinions of the other family members should be incorporated in the care because caring for a sick family member is very important to this culture. The Han Chinese tend to be shorter when compared with whites at all ages, with long trunks and short legs. Their skin is usually more yellow because they have a smaller amount of melanin. The majority of infants have Mongolian spots, and this should be considered when assessing an infant because the spots can look very similar to bruises. The majority are unable to tolerate fresh milk because of a lactose deficiency. Higher incidences of thalassemia and G6PD deficiency is observed. There's also a higher percentage of cancer, especially in the stomach, liver, and cervix. Leading causes of death are heart disease, cerebral vascular disease, cancer, and chronic respiratory disease. Since men tend to be the head of the household, especially the oldest male, and men usually have more authority over their wife, it's important to consider these gender roles when caring for this group. These considerations are important when the patient is to make decisions in regards to their health care. This group may be hesitant when it comes to seeking health care because they believe they do not have control over nature, and a harmonious relationship with nature is important. They are more likely to engage in self-treatment because of their belief in the balance of yin and yang. If healthcare professionals can incorporate traditional Chinese medicine, such as herbs and acupuncture, this culture is more likely to comply with medical recommendations. Although 98% of children enroll in school, approximately 10% of the Han culture cannot read or write. It's interesting to point out, though, that education is valued in this culture, and the universities were created by this culture more than 2,000 years ago. Families often live in close quarters, sometimes with up to 3 generations living in one household. This makes disease transmission, such as tuberculosis, much easier. There are often large gaps between the rich and the poor. These gaps continue to grow due to inflation and illegal activities such as drugs and prostitution. Millions have moved to coastal areas looking for work. Despite these factors influencing vaccinations, there is a law of the People's Republic of China on prevention and treatment of infectious diseases that dictates that all children will receive vaccinations that will be paid for by the state immune program. The Han culture moved south some 2,000 years ago and crossed the Yangtze River, which resulted in expansion of the Han community. Many people living in Hong Kong are descendants of the Han culture because of this migration. There are many Han people still living in river valleys that are good for farming, and they live a very primitive lifestyle. Earthquakes and floods can divide communities and delay health care. China believes in the healthcare principle of prevention first and have made vaccinations a priority since the mid-1980s. Vaccines are a preventative step in eliminating illness. When a person is vaccinated properly, the vaccine makes the illness preventable. The vaccine is seen by the body, and the body attacks it as foreign. If the body comes into contact with the virus again, the body is now prepared to sufficiently fight. Vaccines train the body, in a way, to prepare for an illness and recognize it, so when it encounters it again, it knows how to fight it. The Chinese started vaccinating in the 1950s, starting with the bovine vaccine and then the smallpox. It continued adding vaccinations according to the WHO recommendations into the 1980s before achieving a 90% inoculation rate. Their goal had been to achieve an 85% inoculation rate. China may lead in marketing and money. However, the context of Han culture in China is different than the assumptions made by those who practice Western medicine. Keeping a balance of yin and yang is very important for the Han culture. Traditional practices are used as well as Western practices. Many assumptions may be made that a member of the Han culture may be non-compliant or should not take Chinese medication because its efficacy is not known. We as providers of care should take into consideration this cultural practice to maintain a healthy balance and develop a plan that can incorporate those practices in a safe manner. Vaccinations are accepted in the Han culture, but due to many becoming sick with tuberculosis and hepatitis B and other illnesses, it may be assumed that they do not get vaccinated. Most are actually compliant. Some lack money for the vaccines that are not provided for free. Some people fear getting the illness. We often assume because of the wealth of China that they have a great healthcare system. However, they face the same issues as Western medicine, such as insurance availability, expensive procedures, and kickbacks that are often given to providers. China is currently working on a better healthcare system. For immigrants of the Han culture, we should look at what their barriers of care are and help them with issues that are not understood. Often as healthcare providers, we make missteps in caring for those in another culture. Merriam-Webster Dictionary describes missteps as a mistake in judgment or action. Often as healthcare providers, we assume that we know that our way is the right way. Unfortunately, this is not always the truth. Language barrier is often something of a problem in caring for the Han population. The Han culture has many different languages and dialects. The most common language is Mandarin. Information should be provided in their language, as well as an interpreter service offered. Body language in the Han population is different than the U.S. No eye contact is a cultural practice in the Han culture, and we may mistake this as being rude and not paying attention. It is the opposite of what the Han believe. Silence is used as a sign of dignity and strength. Unfortunately, it may be assumed that a patient is not feeling well when they are actually in pain. In healthcare, we often feel that what the provider instructs is the best practice. We assume that acculturation into our culture has happened with that patient. However, many still practice Chinese medicine and a holistic approach. If healthcare providers will take into consideration yin and yang and traditional medicine such as cupping and herbal remedies, healthcare in the U.S. for the Han culture will continue to increase. There's an interconnection between the United States and the Han population in many ways. The United States over the years has exported to China materials and metals used for manufacturing. In return, we receive many goods that are exported from China. China and Han cultures interconnection has provided many opportunities for not only the Han culture but the Western culture. From ethnic foods to goods and supplies like clothing, cars, and computers. There has been a development of Chinatowns across the United States from which were formed by immigration to the United States. One can achieve cultural enrichment by visiting these areas. Medical tourism is important not only to the Han culture, but to all cultures. It allows a person to come to the U.S. to seek advanced treatment in such areas as cancer. Interconnection with the media is advancing daily. With development of web-based businesses such as Skype, Facebook, and Twitter, we can meet those in other countries by the click of a button. Tuberculosis and hepatitis B are common ailments among the Han population. With migration, these diseases can be brought to the U.S. Thanks to many organizations such as the WHO and the United Nations, we can help educate and vaccinate those against these diseases and provide treatment to those who suffer from the effects of the illnesses. We hope you've enjoyed this overview of vaccines in the Han culture. The references that we composed seem to be some of the most informative about the Han culture. It's important to consider, though, that because most Chinese are of Han descent, it's often difficult to break down specifically a Han culture in everything.